The council room was huge and made of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Queen Valeris sat on her throne, which seemed to be alive, moving and shifting beneath her. She had 6 eyes that looked down at the humans standing in the center of the room. Her face showed nothing but disgust. Commander Jake Morrison stood straight in his military uniform. It looked plain compared to all the shining armor worn by the aliens around him. Next to him stood Lieutenant Claire Bennett. Her hand rested near her weapon, ready if needed. The room was filled with aliens from different worlds. Some had 4 arms, others had scales or fur. Some were tall, some were short, but they all looked at the humans the same way, like they were looking at insects. Queen Valeris finally spoke. Her words came through machines built into the walls so everyone could understand. You come here asking for alliance, but your people have barely learned to travel between stars. What can humans offer to the Zephyrian Empire? Jake kept his face calm even though he felt angry inside. We offer loyalty and the will to survive. Earth is young, but we have faced many hard times. We are still here. The Queen laughed. It sounded like breaking glass. Many of the alien visitors laughed too, making strange sounds that filled the room. Survived? You mean you have stayed alive on one small world? You fight each other like animals. The Zephyrian military has taken over 73 star systems. Our warriors are born and trained for war. They have technology your people cannot dream of. She pointed to her guards. They were huge, nearly 8 feet tall. Their armor had weapons built into it. Blue lights glowed on their chest plates. These are real soldiers, Commander Morrison, not the weak things you call warriors. Jake looked at each guard carefully. He had seen many types of fighters in his life. These aliens were big and had good equipment, but that did not scare him. Good equipment, Your Majesty. But wars are not won by equipment alone. How cute, Valeris said as she stood up from her throne. Maybe we should have a test. Captain Nex, pick your best warrior. Let us see how human courage does against Zephyrian strength. One of the huge guards stepped forward. He was even bigger than the others, nearly 9 feet tall. He had 4 arms. 2 arms ended in hands. The other 2 had blade weapons built into them. Claire became tense, but Jake touched her shoulder gently. If you wish, Your Majesty, I will fight him myself, Jake said calmly. The room went silent. Queen Valeris's 6 eyes went wide and then narrow. She looked almost happy. A man who comes to talk peace. This gets better. Very well, human. We will go to the fighting arena. Let this teach your people to be humble. As they walked to the arena, Claire moved close to Jake. Sir, this is crazy. That thing is twice your size and has 4 arms with weapons. I know, Jake said quietly, but this is not just about winning a fight. It is about showing them who we are. The arena was round with a floor made of smooth metal. Around it were seats that quickly filled with aliens who wanted to watch. Energy fields surrounded the fighting area to keep weapons from hitting the crowd. Jake took off his jacket. Under it he wore a simple combat vest. He stretched his arms and neck. Claire brought him the one thing he asked for, a combat knife. Nothing else. Sir, please, Claire said quietly. Let me fight instead. No, Jake said. He checked the knife to make sure it was balanced right. This has to be me. Captain Nex walked into the arena from the other side. Each step he took made the floor shake a little. He moved his 4 arms in some kind of war ritual. Energy crackled along his blade weapons. The crowd cheered loudly. Queen Valeris's voice boomed through the arena. Fight until one draws blood or gives up. No killing blows allowed, though I doubt the human will last long enough to worry about that. Begin. Nex charged right away. He moved fast for something so big. His top right arm swung wide with the energy blade, leaving a blue trail in the air. Jake dropped low and rolled to the side. The blade passed over his head by inches. The alien turned faster than Jake expected. 2 of his arms came down like hammers, but Jake was already moving. He went inside the alien's reach, so close the big arms could not hit him properly. Jake pushed his shoulder into the alien's body, not to hurt him but to make space. Then he spun away before the other arms could grab him. Stand still, human, Nex shouted. His voice sounded like metal grinding together. The crowd's cheering changed. They sounded confused. The human was not attacking. He was just staying away from the alien's strikes. But he moved with smooth control that showed he knew exactly what he was doing. Jake moved in a circle, breathing steady and watching everything. He had fought against bigger, stronger opponents before. They all had the same weakness. They believed they could not lose. Nex rushed forward again. This time all 4 arms moved together in a pattern meant to trap Jake with no way out. Energy blades came from every direction, but Jake did not try to run backward. He stepped forward and dropped down, sliding on the smooth floor. He went right between the alien's legs. As he slid past, his knife flashed twice. He cut the tubes on the back of Vex's knees, the ones that made the armor work. The big warrior stumbled. His legs stopped working right, and he crashed down on one knee. He roared with anger and pain. Jake was already standing behind him. "Give up," Jake said quietly. His knife was at a weak spot in the alien's armor, right where it protected his spine. The arena was completely silent now. Captain Nex's arms shook with rage, but he could not move without getting hurt badly. After a long moment, he spoke one word in his own language. Everyone knew what it meant. "I surrender." Jake stepped back right away. He held out his hand to help the alien stand. Vex stared at the hand like he did not understand. Then slowly, he took it. Together they stood up, the small human helping the much bigger alien walk out of the arena. Queen Valaris sat frozen on her throne. All 6 of her eyes were wide with shock. Around the room, aliens who had been laughing before were now completely quiet. They had just watched a human, small and weak by their standards, defeat one of the best Zephyrian warriors using nothing but a knife and smart thinking. The Queen's mind was racing. She had called these humans primitive. She had mocked their offer of alliance. She had been so sure that they were nothing special. But now she wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. The central courtyard was beautiful. It was designed for ceremonies and celebrations. Crystal columns rose toward the open sky. Pools of water reflected the light from 3 moons. In 30 minutes, it would become a battlefield covered in blood. Jake Morrison stood at the center with his 50 Marines forming a circle around him. They were checking weapons, sharing ammunition, and saying quiet words that might be their last. Around them, 5,000 Zephyrian warriors took positions. Their gleaming armor and energy weapons looked impressive next to the worn equipment of the human forces. Captain Vex walked up to Jake. His 4 arms carried extra power cells. "For your soldiers," he said, offering them. "Our weapons and yours use similar energy sources." "Thank you, Captain," Jake said. He took them and gave them to Claire to hand out. "I am sorry we will not survive to become better friends. We are not dead yet," Commander Vex replied. But something in his posture said he knew the truth. The displays had shown the Kroll-heavy units. Nothing in the palace could stop them. Queen Valaris came down into the courtyard. Her advisors protested, but she ignored them. She wore ceremonial armor, old and decorated, and carried a weapon that looked like art more than a tool of war. The defenders stood at attention when they saw her. "Stand easy," she commanded. Her voice carried across the space. "I will not hide in my rooms while others die for my kingdom. We face death together, as warriors should." She walked straight to Jake Morrison, looking down at him. "Commander, I owe you an apology. I called your species weak. I called your warriors inadequate. I mocked your offer of alliance. I was wrong, Your Majesty. You do not need to," Jake started. "I do," Valaris interrupted. "Because if we survive, I want you to know that humanity has earned the respect of the Zephyrian Empire. And if we do not survive, I want my people's last battle to be alongside yours. There is honor in that." Before Jake could answer, the air filled with a sound like tearing metal. The Kroll were coming. They poured into the courtyard from every entrance. A wave of clicking and scraping that made the ground shake. The standard drones came first, thousands of them, testing the defenses. The defenders opened fire. Energy bolts and rifle rounds created a storm that turned the first wave into a carpet of dead bodies. But the Kroll did not stop. They climbed over their own dead, using the bodies as shields and ramps. The defensive circles started to get smaller as pure numbers forced the defenders backward. "Hold the line," Captain Nex roared. "Make every shot." Count Sergeant Linda Price's rifle stopped working from overheating. She pulled out her combat knife and stabbed a jumping drone through what looked like its throat. 2 more landed on her and she went down under their weight. Marines next to her killed the creatures and pulled her back to her feet. She was bleeding but alive. Then the heavy units arrived. They were massive. Each one was the size of a small vehicle. They had blade arms that could cut through armor and a shell that regular weapons could not pierce. A dozen of them entered the courtyard. The Kroll swarm seemed to pause, letting their champions move forward. The first heavy unit charged at the human position. Jake stepped forward and fired his rifle on full power. The rounds hit the creature's armor but bounced off. It raised one huge blade arm to cut him in half. Captain Nex intercepted it. All 4 of his arms pushed against the blow. For a moment, warrior and monster were locked together. Then the Kroll's greater strength started to win. Vex was pushed to one knee. His armor cracked under the pressure. Jake dove under the heavy unit. His knife found a weak spot where the leg joined the body. He drove the blade in deep and twisted. cutting something important. The creature fell, nearly crushing him, but Claire was there. She dragged him clear. 11 more heavy units remained. The battle became desperate close combat. Zephyrian warriors and human marines fought side by side, learning to work together on the spot. When a Zephyrian soldier fell, a human covered their spot. When a marine's weapon stopped working, a Zephyrian shielded them while they reloaded. Lieutenant Carl Hughes found himself fighting next to Commander Kresh. She used energy blades with all 4 arms cutting through drones with perfect movements. He shot targets at range. When a heavy unit charged them, they moved together without speaking. Kresh drew its attention while Hughes shot at its joints until it fell. Queen Velaris fought with a fury that surprised her own guards. Her old weapon fired energy bolts that could pierce even the heavy unit's armor, but she was one fighter, and the crawl were hundreds, thousands, that the defensive circle kept shrinking. The courtyard pools turned red with blood, both human red and the strange purple of Zephyrian blood. The dead lay where they fell. There was no time to honor them, no time for anything but survival. Jake's rifle clicked empty. No ammunition left. No options. He pulled his knife for what felt like the last time. Around him, other warriors were doing the same. This was the end. Then the sky opened with fire. Strikes from orbit lanced down from above. Precision shots turned approaching crawl groups into vapor. The swarm paused. Its hive mind was processing this new threat. In that moment of confusion, ships roared overhead. Zephyrian warships. The main fleet had arrived just in time. All defenders, mark your positions. A voice boomed over every communicator. Relief forces are landing. Hold for 2 more minutes. 2 minutes, it might as well have been 2 hours. But the defenders found strength they did not know they had. They pushed back against the crawl, not to win, but to survive. Each second cost blood and pain. Jake lost track of time. There was only the next target, the next blade to avoid, the next life to save. He saw Sergeant Linda Price go down again and refuse to stay down. He saw Captain Nex with his armor broken, still fighting with all 4 arms. He saw Queen Valeris standing over a fallen warrior, protecting them. Then there were ships landing. Fresh warriors poured out. The Kroll hive mind finally calculated that this battle was lost. The swarm retreated, pulling back to their ships, leaving the planet. Jake fell to his knees, unable to stand anymore. Around him, defenders were collapsing, some from injuries, some just from exhaustion. Of the 50 human marines who entered the courtyard, 37 were still alive. The Zephyrian losses were much higher, nearly 2,000 dead or wounded. Queen Valeris walked to Jake, limping. Her fancy armor was burned and dented. She knelt beside him. For a long moment, neither spoke. "Thank you, Commander Morrison," she finally said. "You and your warriors saved not just my life, but my entire world." Jake looked up at her with a tired smile. "That is what allies do, Your Majesty. We stand together around them." Medics moved through the courtyard, treating the wounded. Human and Zephyrian medics worked together, having learned during the battle that their medical knowledge could help both species. Pain was universal, and so was the desire to save lives. Captain Nex sat against the fallen column, his armor removed to treat wounds underneath. A human medic was working on him while a Zephyrian medic worked on Sergeant Linda Price nearby. They exchanged information and techniques without hesitation. "I have fought in 37 battles," Vex said to no one in particular. "I have never seen anything like what happened here today. Humans fight like they are insane. We fight like we are desperate," Jake corrected, being helped to his feet by Claire. "There is a difference." "Is there?" Vex asked. "You charged into certain death. You used tactics no sane warrior would try. You refused to accept reality." "No," Jake said. "We refused to accept defeat. That is different." Claire supported Jake as they walked through the courtyard. Bodies were being moved carefully and with respect. Human and Zephyrian dead were treated the same. They had died together. They would be honored together. "Think anyone back home is going to believe this?" Claire asked. "Not a chance," Jake said. "But we have about 5,000 Zephyrian witnesses, so that should help." Queen Valeris watched them from across the courtyard. Her 6 eyes were thoughtful. She had learned something today, something that might change the future of the galaxy. Strength was not just about size or weapons or technology. Sometimes, strength was about will, about refusing to quit, even when every logical reason said you should. The humans had taught her that, and it was a lesson she would never forget. An hour later, everyone gathered in the council room again, but things felt different now. Before, the aliens had looked at the humans like they were worthless. Now they looked at them with careful interest. almost fear. Jake stood in front of Queen Valeris again. His uniform jacket was back on. He looked clean and calm, with just a bit of sweat on his forehead from the fight. Claire stood beside him with a small smile. That was surprising, Valeris said. Her voice was controlled, but something in it had changed. You fight with tricks instead of honor, Commander Morrison. Is this how human warriors fight? With lies and running away? With respect, Your Majesty, those were not tricks, Jake replied. Those were tactics. We fight to win using whatever advantages we have. I am smaller than Captain X, so I used speed. He had better weapons, so I attacked his weak points. That is not wrong. That is smart. Smart. The Queen repeated the word slowly, like she was tasting something strange. The Zephyrian way is to fight directly, strength against strength. We do not hide or run away. Jake nodded, which probably works when you fight people who follow the same rules. But Your Majesty, the galaxy is big. Not everyone fights fair. Not everyone will respect your way of fighting. A helper came to the Queen and whispered something in her ear. Her face became darker. She waved the helper away and looked at Jake with all 6 eyes. It seems I was too quick to judge human warriors, she said, her voice tight. But winning against one warrior in a safe fight is different from leading armies in real war. Tell me, Commander Morrison, have you seen real battle? Not games in an arena, but true combat where people die. Jake's face changed. His eyes looked far away for a moment. Claire noticed his hand move to touch a scar on his neck. Yes, Your Majesty. More times than I want to remember. Then maybe you can explain something. Valeris leaned forward. Our information says that humanity has been fighting wars against itself for all of your history. You attack your own kind with anger that even the most violent species find disturbing. How can we trust warriors who cannot even keep peace with each other? The room became quiet. Everyone looked at Jake. It was a good question, one that went to the heart of what other species thought about humans. Jake met the Queen's eyes without looking away. You are right. We have fought each other for thousands of years. Over land, over resources, over beliefs, and sometimes for reasons that look stupid now. But here is what you need to understand. We learned from every single one of those wars. We learned how to plan, how to survive, how to change our method. We learned that the strongest army does not always win. We learned that victory often goes to the side that refuses to quit, even when losing seems certain. He paused, thinking about his next words carefully. More than that, we learned that our greatest strength comes when we stop fighting each other and stand together. When humanity faces a threat from outside, all our fights with each other become nothing. We become something greater. Nice words, Valeris said, but her voice did not have as much confidence as before. But words mean nothing. I am still not convinced that humanity deserves a place among the great powers of the galaxy. Before Jake could answer, a loud alarm rang through the room. The crystal walls flashed red. Armed guards ran into the chamber. An officer of some alien species waved frantically at a glowing display in the air. Your Majesty. The officer called out in a panicked voice. The crawl swarm has entered our system. Multiple ships detected. They are coming straight for the palace. The color left Queen Valeris's face. Around the room, the calm diplomats started pushing toward the doors in barely controlled panic. How many ships? The Queen demanded. 12 big warships, Your Majesty, and what looks like a full invasion army. They will reach orbit in 1 hour. Jake looked quickly at Claire. The crawl swarm. Earth intelligence does not have much information about them. A nearby diplomat, a creature that looked like a reptile with see-through scales, turned to them with fear in his eyes. Pray you never learn more. Humans, the crawl, are a hive mind. Billions of creatures controlled by one consciousness. They do not talk, do not retreat, and do not stop until they have eaten everything living on a world. They have destroyed 17 civilizations in the past 100 years. What about your military? Claire asked Queen Valeris directly. Our main fleet is 2 star systems away. Dealing with what we now understand was probably a trap, Valeris said. Her voice sounded hollow. The palace guard has only 5,000 soldiers. Against the Kroll, that is nothing. Jake stepped forward. His military bearing became very clear. Your Majesty, the human delegation has 50 Marines on our ship, the Valiant. It is not much, but they are ready to fight if you will accept our help. The Queen stared at him like she could not believe what she was hearing. 50 soldiers. Against the Kroll. Commander Morrison, this is not about honor or proving yourselves. This is about dying. I am ordering all non-military people to evacuate, including your delegation. With respect, Your Majesty, we did not come here to run away at the first sign of trouble, Jake said firmly. Besides, you said it yourself. You only have 1 hour. You need every fighter you can get. For the first time since they met, Queen Valeris looked at Commander Jake Morrison not with hate or disgust, but with something close to respect. Very well, Commander. Work with Captain Nex, he will show you where you are needed most. And Commander, thank you. Jake nodded and turned to Claire. Get our people ready. Full combat gear. This is going to be bad. As they left the council room, Claire spoke quietly. Sir, we both know 50 Marines cannot make a real difference against an invasion force. Maybe not, Jake agreed. But we can make them remember that humans do not run. And maybe, just maybe, we can buy enough time for their fleet to arrive. That is all we can do. The palace began preparing for war. Soldiers ran through halls carrying weapons and equipment. Officers shouted orders. Civilians were herded toward evacuation ships. And in the armory, 50 human Marines checked their gear with the calm focus of people who had faced death before. Sergeant Linda Price looked up as Jake entered. Heard we are staying to fight, Commander. Against bugs that eat planets, that is correct, Sergeant, Jake said. Good, Linda said with a hard smile. I was getting bored anyway. Lieutenant Carl Hughes laughed. Bored? We almost started a war by beating up their champion fighter, and now we are going to save their whole planet, another Marine said. Earth is really going to think we are making this up. Jake looked at his people. They were scared. He could see it in their eyes, but they were also ready. That was what made humans different. They could be afraid and still choose to fight. Listen up, Jake said, and the room went quiet. We are about to face an enemy that has destroyed civilizations, an enemy that never stops and never gives up. They have more numbers, better weapons, and home field advantage. By all logic, we should not even try to fight them, he paused. But we are going to fight anyway, because that is what humans do. We look at impossible odds and we say, watch us. We are going to show these aliens why you do not count humanity out. We are going to show the Crawl why they should have picked a different planet. And we are going to make damn sure that if we go down, they remember us. The Marines raised their weapons in silent acknowledgement. No cheers, no war cries, just hard determination. Captain Nex entered the armory with several Zephyrian soldiers. Commander Morrison, the Crawl will be here soon. We need to set up defenses. Jake turned to him. Captain, we need to talk about tactics. Your people fight in one way, the Crawl fight in another. We need to fight in a way neither of them expects. Vex looked at the small group of humans with their basic weapons and worn armor. Then he thought about how this small human had defeated him in the arena by refusing to fight the way Vex expected. What do you suggest? Vex asked. Jake smiled. It was not a happy smile. It was the smile of someone about to do something dangerous and probably stupid. Let me show you how humans fight when we are cornered. The command center was filled with glowing displays showing the palace defenses. Jake stood next to Captain Nex, looking at the tactical map. Red dots were falling from space like deadly rain. Each dot was a Crawl ship or drop pod. They will hit the eastern shield generators first, Vex explained. His 4 arms pointed at different weak spots on the map. Once those are destroyed, they will pour in like water. Each Crawl drone is not very strong alone, but they attack in thousands. They will crush our positions with pure numbers. Lieutenant Claire Bennett walked in wearing full combat armor. Behind her came the 50 human Marines. Compared to the tall Zephyrian guards around them, the humans looked small and poorly equipped. They carried standard rifles, knives, and expressions that said they knew what was coming. Marines are ready, sir, Claire reported. I split them into 3 squads. Lieutenant Carl Hughes is leading 1st squad on the eastern wall. Sergeant Linda Price has 2nd squad on the north wall. I will take 3rd squad as mobile reserve. Jake nodded and turned to Vex. Captain, your soldiers are trained for formal combat, direct fighting, strength against strength, like the Queen said. The Crawl will not fight that way. What would you do differently? Vex asked. His tone was respectful now, not mocking. We pull back, Jake said. He changed the display to show a defense in layers. Not surrender, not retreat, but tactical withdrawal. We let them think they are winning. We draw them into kill zones where your heavy weapons can hit them easily. We use the palace buildings against them. Narrow hallways, choke points, places where their numbers do not help them as much. Vex studied the plan. His alien face was hard to read. Then he turned to his second in command, a female warrior named Kresh. Do what the human says. Move our forces to these positions. Get the internal defenses ready. The first impact shook the whole palace. On the display, the eastern shield flickered and died. Hundreds of red dots started falling toward the surface. Here they come, Jake said quietly. He picked up his rifle and checked it. Remember, the Crawl are a hive mind. They will work together perfectly. They will be organized and efficient, but they will not be creative. Use that against them. The battle started like a wave crashing on rocks. The crawl drones were like nightmares made of metal and chitin. Each one was the size of a large dog. They ran on 6 legs and had blade arms that could cut through armor. They came over the walls in a chittering mass, their hive mind directing them perfectly, that the Zephyrian defenders fired energy weapons that cut through the crawl ranks, but for every dozen that died, 20 more took their place. The aliens' rigid defensive lines started to bend under the pressure of pure numbers. First squad, fall back to checkpoint Alpha, Jake ordered into his communicator. Let them follow you into the corridor. Second squad, get ready for crossfire positions. Lieutenant Carl Hughes and his Marines retreated in good order, firing as they went. The crawls saw weakness, saw prey running away. The hive mind sent more drones to chase them. The creatures flooded into the corridor and ran right into a trap. Sergeant Linda Price's squad opened fire from hidden positions on the sides while Hughes's Marines turned and fired from the front. Their rifles, made to punch through starship holes, tore through the crawl easily, but the crawl did not retreat or hesitate. The hive mind simply sent more drones forward. They climbed over the bodies of their dead to keep attacking. They are adapting, Claire reported from her position. They are starting to split up, looking for weak points. Jake watched the tactical display, seeing the pattern form. The crawl hive mind was smart, learning from each fight. It was time to give it something it could not predict. All human units, switch to pattern Delta, Jake ordered. His voice was calm despite the chaos he could see on the monitors. Zephyrian forces, hold your positions and give us covering fire. We are going hunting. Commander, what are you doing? Captain Next demanded. Something the crawl will not expect, Jake replied, already moving toward the exit. Trust me. The human Marines started moving, not away from the crawl swarm, but toward it. They split into small teams of 3 or 4 soldiers and started using the palace in ways the Zephyrians never thought of. They climbed onto high walkways, dropped into maintenance tunnels, and came up behind crawl groups. Sergeant Linda Price led her team through an air vent that should have been too small for combat. They crawled through single file and came out in a balcony overlooking a big group of crawl. Her team fired from above, killing many before disappearing back into the walls. Lieutenant Carl Hughes found a maintenance bay with construction equipment. His squad made explosive traps from plasma cutters and power cells. They left them in hallways the crawl would probably use. The explosions brought down entire walls onto the swarms. Jake led a team through the palace's outside walls. Using emergency airlocks and climbing gear, they positioned themselves on the outer wall. When the next wave of crawls started their attack, expecting to find defenders behind walls, Jake's team fired from above and behind. It caused confusion in the usually coordinated swarm dot in the command center. Captain Nex watched in amazement. The tactical display showed crawl forces not advancing anymore, but pulling back and regrouping. The hive mind was being forced to adapt to an enemy it could not predict. This was slowing down the whole attack. They fight like no one I have ever seen. Lex said to Commander Crochet, they do not follow any standard rules. How do you fight against warriors who refuse to follow the rules of war? Queen Valeris entered the command center. She had refused to evacuate. She watched the displays in silence, seeing her palace become a maze of deadly surprises for the invaders. The humans were not stronger than the crawl. They did not have better weapons. They were simply refusing to fight the way the crawl expected. On the eastern wall, Jake and his team had just finished setting another trap when a message came through. Commander Morrison, this is Vex. The crawl are gathering for a big push in the central courtyard. They are bringing in their heavy units. Warrior drones 3 times the size of normal ones. If they break through there, they will reach the center of the palace. Jake looked at Claire and saw the same understanding in her eyes. The courtyard was a killing ground with no cover, no tricks available. It would be direct fighting, exactly the kind the humans could not win. How long until your main fleet arrives? Jake asked. 43 minutes. Valeris's voice came over the channel. Commander, I cannot ask you to. You are not asking, Your Majesty, Jake interrupted. Claire, get the Marines to the courtyard. All of them. We are going to hold that position. Sir, that is suicide, Claire said quietly. Yeah, Jake agreed. Probably, but if we do not, everyone in this palace dies, and Earth's first try at making galactic allies dies with them. That is not acceptable. He switched to the general channel. All human forces, move to the central courtyard. We are going to show these bugs what humanity does when our backs are against the wall. We do not give up, we do not surrender, and we sure do not go down quietly. The Marines started moving toward the courtyard. Their ammunition was running low. Their armor was burned and dented, but they were still determined. Above them, the crawl swarm gathered for what should be the killing blow. Captain Nex watched the humans take positions in the courtyard, so few against so many. He turned to Queen Valeris. Your Majesty, with your permission, the Zephyrian Guard will stand with the humans. Valeris looked at the tactical display, at the tiny group of humans preparing to face impossible odds. She thought about her earlier mockery, her disgust for these primitive warriors from an unimportant world. Permission granted, Captain. All forces, take positions in the courtyard. We stand together. The defenders moved into the courtyard. 5,000 Zephyrian warriors with their shining armor and energy weapons, 50 human marines with their basic equipment and unbreakable will, and in the sky above, thousands of crawl drones gathering like a storm cloud, ready to descend and destroy everything. Jake checked his rifle one more time. The power cell showed less than half charge. He had one spare. That was it. Around him, his marines were doing the same quiet checks, making peace with what was coming. You know, Sergeant Linda Price said, when I joined the Marines, they told me I would see the galaxy. They did not mention dying on an alien world fighting space bugs. At least it is not boring, Lieutenant Carl Hughes replied. Jake smiled, despite everything. When we get home, they are going to build statues of us. If we get home, Sir Claire corrected. Right, Jake said. If, the first crawl drones appeared at the courtyard entrances, then more, then hundreds. The defenders raised their weapons and prepared for what might be their last battle. 3 days passed. The battle damage was repaired with speed that amazed the humans. The council room was filled with alien diplomats again, but this time, there was no mockery, no contempt, only respect and curiosity. Jake stood in the center of the chamber. His uniform was clean and new, replacing the one destroyed in battle. Bandages covered some of his wounds, but he stood straight. Claire was beside him, also bandaged but standing proud. Around the room, the surviving human marines stood at attention in dress uniforms. Queen Valeris rose from her throne. Her armor was ceremonial again, but Jake noticed she wore a small pin shaped like a human combat knife on her chest. A reminder of the battle. Representatives of the Galactic Council, Valeris began. Her voice was strong and clear. 3 days ago, the crawl swarm attacked this world. Our main fleet was away. Our defenses were minimal. We should have fallen. She paused, looking directly at Jake. We did not fall because of these humans. 50 warriors from a species we called primitive. A species we mocked. They stood with us against impossible odds. Many of them died protecting a world that was not their own, for people they had just met. The room was silent. Every eye was on the human delegation. I called humanity weak, Valeris continued. I said their warriors were inadequate. I was not just wrong. I was blind. The Galactic Council has debated for years whether humanity deserves membership. I say we have wasted those years. Humanity has proven their worth, not with words or wealth, but with blood and courage. She looked around the chamber at the assembled delegates. I propose that humanity be granted full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. All in favor. Every hand, claw, tentacle, and appendage in the room rose. The vote was unanimous. Jake felt something tight in his chest loosen. Claire's hand found his and squeezed once, quickly. They had done it. Earth was no longer alone in the galaxy. After the ceremony, there was a reception. Aliens who had laughed at the humans 3 days ago now wanted to talk to them, to hear their stories, to understand how they thought. Jake found himself surrounded by curious delegates, asking questions. How did you know the crawl would follow you into the corridors? One asked. How did you stay calm when you knew you might die? Asked another. Where does that determination come from? A third wanted to know. Jake answered as best he could, but the truth was hard to explain. How do you tell someone that humanity's greatest strength came from thousands of years of struggling to survive on a planet that regularly tried to kill them? How do you explain that humans had fought so many wars against each other that they had learned every possible way to win? Captain Nex found Jake on a balcony overlooking the city. The alien's armor was repaired, but like the Queen, he wore something new. A patch on his shoulder showing the human and Zephyrian flags side by side. Commander Morrison, Lex said, I wanted to speak with you before you leave. Of course, Captain, Jake replied. The Queen has asked me to serve as military liaison to Earth, Lex explained. I have accepted. Someone must teach your warriors the proper way to fight. Jake laughed. The proper way. Captain, we won that battle by fighting improperly. Exactly, Lex replied. His face, so alien and hard to read, seemed to show something like a smile. That is what I must learn. The Zephyrians have been fighting the same way for 1,000 years. You humans change the rules when the old ones do not work. That is a skill worth learning. You are welcome on Earth any time, Captain, Jake said, extending his hand. Vex took it, and they shook in the human way. Below them, the city of Zephyria continued its repairs. Humans and aliens worked together, not because anyone forced them, but because they had fought together and survived together. That created bonds that words alone never could. Queen Valaris found Claire in a garden, sitting quietly and watching alien birds fly between strange trees. The Queen sat beside her without asking permission. Lieutenant Bennett Valaris said, "May I speak openly with you?" "Of course, Your Majesty," Claire replied. "I almost got you all killed," Valaris said bluntly. "My pride, my arrogance, my certainty that I knew everything. If Commander Morrison had been less patient, less willing to prove himself, your delegation would have left before the crawl arrived. You would be safe now." Claire considered this. "Maybe we would have left. The crawl would have attacked anyway, and your world would have fallen. We will never know. What we do know is that we stayed, we fought, and we won. That is enough, is it?" Valaris asked. 37 of your people survived out of 50. 13 dead for a world that is not yours. They died protecting people who could not protect themselves," Claire said quietly. "They died doing what was right. There are worse ways to die." Valaris was quiet for a long moment. "Your species confuses me, Lieutenant. You fight each other constantly. Your history is full of wars and conflicts. Yet when faced with an external threat, you unite instantly." "How?" Claire smiled. "Because no matter how much we fight among ourselves, we are all human. When something threatens humanity as a whole, our internal fights seem small and stupid. We remember that we are one species, one people. That is when we are most dangerous and most noble," Valaris added. Inside the palace, Sergeant Linda Price was saying goodbye to some Zephyrian soldiers she had fought beside. They exchanged contact information, promising to stay in touch. War was terrible, but it created friendships that peace never could. Lieutenant Carl Hughes was explaining human tactics to a group of young Zephyrian officers who were eager to learn. They asked questions faster than he could answer them, fascinated by the strange way humans approached combat. The other human Marines were scattered throughout the palace, talking with aliens, sharing stories, building bridges between species that had been strangers days ago. That evening, the human delegation prepared to leave. The Valiant was ready, its crew eager to return home with the news. Earth was now a full member of the Galactic Council. Humanity had a place among the stars. Jake stood in the shuttle bay, checking the manifest one last time. Queen Valaris approached with Captain Nex and several other officials. "Commander Morrison," Valaris said formally, "on behalf of the Zephyrian Empire and the Galactic Council, I thank you. You have given us a great gift. Not just your military assistance, but a new way of thinking about strength and courage." "We did what anyone would do, Your Majesty," Jake replied. "No," Valaris said firmly. "You did what humans do. You faced impossible odds and refused to accept defeat. You adapted. You innovated. You survived. Those are not common traits in the galaxy. They are precious ones." She reached into her armor and pulled out a small box. "This is the Star of Vela, the highest military honor our empire can give. It has been awarded only 17 times in our history. I am giving one to each of your surviving Marines, and posthumously to those who fell. You have earned it." Jake took the box. Inside was a crystal star that seemed to glow with its own light. "Thank you, Your Majesty. This means more than you know." "There is one more thing," Valaris said. She gestured, and an aide brought forward a datapad. "A treaty of alliance between Earth and the Zephyrian Empire. We wish to formalize what was proven in battle. We are stronger together." Jake read through the treaty quickly. It was generous, offering trade agreements, technology sharing, and mutual defense. "I do not have the authority to sign this on behalf of Earth, but I will make sure our government sees it. I am certain they will agree." "Good," Valaris said. "Now go home, Commander. Tell your people that they are no longer alone in the galaxy. Tell them that they have allies who will stand with them, as they stood with us." The human delegation boarded their shuttle. As it lifted off from the palace landing pad, Jake looked down at the city below. He could see the courtyard where they had fought, now cleaned and restored. Soon there would be a memorial there, honoring all who died defending it. On the flight back to the Valiant, Claire sat next to Jake. "Think this will change things back home?" "Everything," Jake said. "Earth just went from being alone to having allies among the stars. Our technology will advance by centuries. Our position in the galaxy is secure. Yeah, this changes everything." And all it took was 50 Marines willing to stand against an alien invasion. Claire said with a slight smile. That is humanity for you, Jake replied. We do not know when to quit. The Valiant jumped to faster than light speed, heading home. Behind them, the Zephyrian system grew small and then vanished. But the connections formed there would last forever. On Earth, people would hear the story and some would not believe it. How could 50 soldiers make such a difference? How could one battle change everything? But those who understood human nature would know the truth. Humanity's strength never came from being the biggest or the strongest. It came from refusing to give up. It came from adapting when others stayed rigid. It came from standing together when it mattered most. Queen Valeris had mocked human warriors, calling them weak and primitive. But she had learned what every enemy of humanity eventually learned. Humans might start a fight looking like they would lose, but they would not stop, would not quit, and would not accept defeat until their last breath. That made them dangerous.